All right, so one of you requested that they would like to know how to use the Moho Studio camera because the way they have been using it has been giving them a little bit of issues. So today I'll just explain what I know about Moho Studio cameras and how to use them properly. And if you have any other question, feel free to reach out to me in the link in the description and we can actually discuss much more properly. But this is a general video for every person plus yourself who made this request, and I hope this helps you understand cameras in Moho Studio. Let's go. Now, for you to use the camera in Moho Studio, you can do this in two ways. It actually depends on what you're actually creating. Now, I have brought in this Moho Studio's default character to use as an example. Now, we have our camera, which is this blue line you see right here on screen. When you have this, you could have this as your main camera, which is just a flat direct camera in Moho Studio. And if I play this now, whatever you are watching right now is what is on camera. Now you may want to actually pan to this guy right here, then the camera appears on this guy, then appears on the wolf right here. Or I really don't know what you're actually trying to create, so I'll just show you how this camera works in Moho Studio. Now you could do it this way. For this is your first tracking camera, and this is your zoom camera, and this is your roll camera, and this is your pan and tilt camera. Let's start with the pan and tilt. When we pan like this is what we have. We pan to the left, we pan to the side. You could see that already. I'll reset to undo that. Then if we go to the roll camera, this is what we have. You rolling, and depends on what you are creating also. Then we have our zoom camera. Now we can zoom in and zoom out, etc. And we have our main tracking camera to move your camera to the left and to the right. Now, when creating in Moho Studio, you may want to create using your cameras in different ways. First of all, you might want to zoom in on this character. You might not want to use this workspace orbit tool to use your camera to work. So you might just want to use your zoom in and your track camera. Let's say for this first frame, we want to start with this character right here. So now we zoom in here and we have this character, isn't it? So we may zoom in more to the character's face. I don't know what to call it. I think this is a pig. Yeah, so we zoom in more on this character's face. So while the character is actually moving and does his thing, we will now add keyframe of this track camera and the zoom camera at the same time, which you could see right here, then maybe on frame 72 we may now zoom out a bit like this and drag this to this place. Maybe on frame 60, yeah, we move out a bit. Let me do that again. Let me Control Z to undo that. Control Z to undo that. So maybe at frame 60, because of the background, we'll just zoom out a bit like this. So we don't zoom out of the background. You get my point? So we add our track keyframe also and the zoom keyframe. Then we want the zoom to start on 72. So we'll just use our track keyframe, zoom to this guy, then then add our keyframe here also, then maybe at 96 now reveal by zooming out the whole body of the character at this point per se. So we'll now have something like this. So when we play this, what you will see is this. I will use Control J, I think, yes, to make sure that we're just viewing just the camera. When you hit Control J on your keyboard, you have this black space appear, isolating everything, just giving you just the camera view like you would see when you had render this out, so that you see exactly what you are creating. So when we play this, we'll have this. So you could see right now it looks really good, and we can go ahead and also at maybe frame 120, maybe at frame 108, you want to hold your camera or your scene a bit before you move your camera to give it this animatic feel. I hope you understand what I'm saying, because if you see, like, from here there's a hold, then before there's a shift, then it shifts to this character. Now there's a swift shift. But what about if you just want this the shift from this character to hold at least to, let's say, 108? So what you will do is just either you copy these keyframes, Control C and Control V, you put it there. So at least from 96 to 108, there's a hold, on that character. But already from 72 to 96, the character already revealed itself and there's a hold, right? So let's say the character holds more until 126. So what we'll do is we will drag this keyframe and put it at 126. So at 126, we will now go to probably 138, depending on how fast you really want this, camera motion or movement to look. Then you will, zoom out a little bit, right? I like to do that because it gives it, this cinematic, animatic kind of feel. All right. Then on, let's say, frame 150, you now move your camera to your final character, which is the wolf, right? So when it moves to your wolf, then you make sure you always add your two keyframes that you're actually using at that moment, so that you don't have like a misanimation of your keyframes. Okay, so we from 126, if we play that, you could see it moves a bit, then it moves to that character. If it moves too fast, you can go ahead and readjust it as you want. Then at maybe frame, as it moves to the character, now it sees the character. Now you want the camera to zoom a little bit into the character, then before it moves straight up into that character to view the character itself. So at frame 156, you can now probably hold a little bit. So you copy this frame and put this keyframe and put it at 156. Then at 162, you zoom in a little bit, right? Then make sure you have your zoom keyframe also highlighted there, so you have the two keyframe as usual. Then at 180, 168, you zoom out again just a little bit. Then make sure you have your tracking keyframe. Then maybe at then you hold it for maybe 128, 180 rather. Then you hold it for 180. Then before you now totally zoom into the character itself, maybe at 210. Okay. So then we now make a full zoom into the character to get the character, maybe the character is angry or something. Like I said, it all depends on what you are trying to create. Okay, so let's make this 300. It all depends on what you are trying to create or how you are trying to create it. Now, this camera movement I am creating is totally flat, and it doesn't really, it wouldn't feel so much 3D, but you can get away with that, cinematic, animatic, 3D-ish kind of feel, in Moho Studio, because Moho Studio is a 2D software when you create your cameras like this. I hope this makes sense. So let's see. So you see. So we have this a little zoom in, then before it zooms into the character, so it gives this focus. You see this in movies, they do this a lot, to bring out the character of the character the camera is trying to focus on at that moment. And at this point where you have these, mini zoom in, maybe the camera moves and you want to maybe put a sound of a shorter sound, the lens is actually adjusting before it sees the character. You can go ahead at this point, maybe at this point where it zooms in a bit, you now blur the character. You add a keyframe of the wolf itself. On the wolf itself, you can blur the character, and it also depends on the background you are actually using. So you go ahead and blur the background and blur the character itself just a little bit. Let me just show you a quick example. So what we'll do is that we'll have to add a keyframe. Before we do that, we'll have to allow animated layer effects. Well, when we double click on this wolf layer or any of the layer you want to do the same thing to, allow animated effects. Then when you get to blur radius, you just add a little blur so that you have a keyframe there. You put OK. All right, so you can go ahead, and since you have a keyframe there, you can go ahead and bring it back to 0 because you already have a keyframe. What you wanted to do is make sure that your keyframe is, on the timeline. So you have your keyframe on your timeline. Your keyframe here is 0. So when the camera zooms into this point, you want the animal to be blur. So you now, maybe make it 6, I don't know, or 3, depending on how you want it blurry. Then you hit OK. I could hit enter here. Then at 168, you can hold Control C, Control V, it is still blurry at this at 168. Then at 180, as the camera zooms into the character, it becomes much more clearer. So you come back to the first frame, which is at 0, which is blur. You know that already. Then you put it. So while the camera is zooming, it's becoming clearer. All right. So when we render this is what you will see. So I'll do a quick render of this animation so you see what I just created. Okay. Make sure you check the description. If you haven't taken our courses yet, make sure you check the description, take the course, learn something new on face animation, learn something new on how to create vector character animation in Moho Studio. And also there are freebies in the Gumroad link. Get those freebies, learn how to animate your characters easily before you start creating your own animation so that you'll be better at animating. All right, so this is the rendered version of what we just created, and you can see how it plays out. You can see how blurry it gets before it zooms into the character, and that's what I was trying to explain. Now you can actually do this with this concept that I have shown you, or you can go ahead and use the orbit tool, which I'll be showing you very soon. So let's get into that real quickly. So I had already created this animation, but I now realize that my recording screen tool did not actually record all the things that I created. So I'll just go ahead and re-explain it, and I hope you would understand. So let's get into it. All right. So this is your orbit tool, and you use it to create your camera movement if you want it to look a little bit 3D. Now you could see that the characters are actually placed differently. This one is way more at the back. This one is a little bit forward, and the dragon is much more forward. So when you have your characters like this, you will separate them. Initially, when you use the orbit tool, you will see your characters not actually placed like this. If you have a scene, your characters will actually be flat. So it's up to you to come to your characters. You pick whichever character you want and place them wherever you want in the scene. So you can go to the wolf or the dragon, whichever character you're using anyway. You'll be creating something different from mine anyways. So you place them wherever you want to place them. Okay. And after placing them like this, you now have perspective, and you now have background and foreground characters. So that means you'll be able to move your camera in between these characters. And how do you do this? It's really simple. All you have to do is use your camera tool here. Then you take your track camera tool and you use it to move your camera rather, forward or backward by holding Alt. Forward, backward, you just drag like this by holding Alt. Then you can move it to the side by not holding anything, like this. And if you don't understand what you are doing actually, you can always reset the view and see what your camera sees. Then at the same time, adjust your screen to see what you want your character to see. Then when you do that, you follow that rule, and which is exactly the same with the initial explanation that I have given you. Now you could see that this character and this character has perspective, and it looks much more 3D, but initially they wouldn't look like this. You see them much more flat. Okay, if I play this out with what I have already created, now you would see I'll hit Ctrl J on my keyboard to isolate the character so that we could see what the camera sees. Okay, so now when we play this out, so now you can see the camera practically just moves around the characters and sees everything. Okay, for the sake of those who may not really understand exactly how to do this, I will do this again. I think I should do it all over again, and I hope the screen record records properly now. Okay guys, let's go. I will delete all the camera keyframes that we have here. So let's get it started. Now, we're starting from frame 1. So when we use our orbit tool, now when you start, you could actually go in and make sure from this point, when you have this screen like this, you just use your track camera to just rearrange, zoom in, and make sure that your camera sees what you want it to see at first. That is after arranging the characters in your orbit. Okay, when you arrange the characters in your orbit, you place them where you want to place them using your move tool for the characters. You could place them anywhere you want to place them, etc. But this is the way I want to place them. Okay, so you go to your orbit tool and hit reset, and make sure that your camera is seeing the first character that you want to see, or maybe the camera wants to see into the environment, and maybe it's a particular building and you want to zoom out of that building. It all depends on what you are creating. You now start picking your frames from here. Now you go back to your orbit tool so that you can see what you are creating. then you move a couple of frames. Now the camera is actually seeing this guy and it's not seeing any other of the characters. So you can actually zoom in a bit. So you go to your track camera, hold Alt, then hit a little bit of zoom. So if we reset this right now and we look, you could see now the camera is going into the character a little bit here. Then now we'll go back to our orbit tool. I won't come to our orbit tool. Maybe at frame 18, we can stop the camera from zooming and take it back a little bit right here. So we will hold at frame 18, Control C, Control V. Then at frame 24, the hold Alt, then probably zoom back a little bit. Then maybe at frame 30, you still hold that same frame, Control C, Control V. Then maybe at frame 36, since you have zoomed back a little bit, then you now zoom in. Now holding Alt, then you zoom in right now. So what you're doing, whenever somebody wants to push the camera, there's a little backward movement before you move a little forward. That is what we're trying to simulate, and it gives you this cinematic and animatic kind of feel when you are creating your animation. But you really don't have to do that. But when you are holding your camera and you are moving your camera, you just make sure that you give a little time, you hold them before you push. And this is what you will have when you, let's reset the view and see what we have done. You could see this. So you can see now this gives it a little bit of, feel and makes the animation come alive. Okay. From here, let's say we want the camera to see the wolf before it sees the dragon. What we'll do right now is, after you have been able to create something like this, what you will do is maybe go to like frame 48. You copy this frame, Control C, Control V, so that it holds between frame 36 and 48 before you move the character. Holding your camera before you move it, it actually helps to give it this natural feel, because you can't just turn your camera like that. You must actually be looking at something before you move your camera to a different place, isn't it? So I'll hit Ctrl J to remove the focus black spot, whatever you want to call it right now. So I will go back to my orbit tool and I'll rotate it like this, and this is what the camera sees right here. So the next thing I'll do is I'll pick my track tool and I will move my camera to where the wolf is. So if you look at it right now, the camera is actually high up at this point. It's not actually seeing the wolf. So let me rotate this a bit to see what the camera sees. Okay, so I will move this track orbit tool to this point, then I'll drag it down a bit to at least make sure the camera sees the wolf. Then I'll drag my orbit tool to see if the camera is actually targeting the wolf or maybe it's seeing the dragon. At this point, it's actually in between. You can't really tell. So for you to tell what the camera sees properly, you will have to reset the view and go back. But let me just do what I can do right here and drag it to this point, because I want it to see the wolf's head while it videos. Okay, so if it doesn't see the wolf's head properly, let's drag it down a bit. So if it doesn't see the wolf's head properly, what we'll do right back, we'll go back to this tool here, or rather we'll reset the view of this, and this is what the camera actually sees at this point. So what we'll do, we'll just take our track camera and drag it to the place we want to see. Okay, so now it's seeing the wolf head exactly. Then we'll go back to our orbit tool and rotate it, and this is what we'll see. So basically, one of the advice I think I will give here is always use your track tool and don't use your zoom tool when you reset the view. When you reset the view like this, it is wise to always use your track tool to adjust your camera to what you want it to see. Then you use your zoom tool on the orbit. It gives it a much more better feel, and it doesn't feel so much 2D-ish like the first camera example I gave when we started this tutorial. Okay, so now I will zoom out at maybe frame 72 using my track tool. Also hold Alt, then I zoom out a bit, then I go to maybe frame 48, hold Alt, then I zoom in a bit. Okay, then I copy that frame, then I probably go to maybe 120, Control C, Control V, all right, to paste that frame there. Now I'll be holding that same look at 102. But first of all, let's see what it looks like at frame 84 while we zoom in. Okay, so that means at frame 60, it's like this. Okay, now the reason you see this is because the dog is actually walking forward. So definitely the back came in. So what we'll do, we'll just drag at this point, we have the head here still, then we'll just drag this point still because we still have the head here. Okay, so at frame 60 we'll have something like this. All right, then at frame 102, what we want is a much more zoomed out view from the head. Okay, so I'll go back to the orbit, rotate it like this, then I will zoom out more. Oh, hold Alt. That's the reason you hold Alt. Then zoom out, zoom out, zoom out. You can scroll to see where you're zooming. Make sure you're holding Alt, then you zoom out. Then let's reset the view to see what we have. So you can see we have this. Then we can just go ahead and click our track tool and adjust the view. Then we can go back to our orbit tool and zoom out more. Click on your track tool, then zoom out more so that you see more of the character. Then when we reset this view, and this is what we have. So let's say if we play this from here, so we have this. And if I should put this, if I should hit Ctrl J and go back to frame 1, this is what we have. All right, so you can see your camera is actually working well. So maybe at this point you don't want the camera to see this character. Let's hit Ctrl J to make it look properly. Now you don't want your camera to see this character. So from here there is this. So maybe at 54, what you will do is you will hold your track tool, hold shift and drag this up. So we have this, then it comes down to this point. Okay, so when it moves, it doesn't show that character. So we'll look at it and take it frame by frame to make sure that it's not actually viewing your character in any way. You can hold shift and make sure that is actually above that. Now, the reason you do this is because probably maybe as you are actually creating, you don't want to reveal the dragon character initially. Like I said initially, it actually depends on what you are creating and how you are directing your movie or your shot to make the camera see what you want it to see. Okay, so now at this point, we will hold this frame maybe up to frame 120, Ctrl C, Ctrl V. So when we hold this frame up to frame 120, maybe at 132, we'll go to our orbit view at 132. Since it's our orbit and we're holding Alt, hold Alt, shift it forward a little bit, go to 144, hold Alt, shift it back a little bit, then you hold that frame, Ctrl C, Ctrl V at to 156, then you paste it there, then maybe at 168, we or one let's say at 180 there's a slow pan to where the dragon is. So you can actually do this from here, you pan it from here, or you go back to the orbit tool, reset view, and you pan it from here like this. You are actually in full control of this. So when you pan it from here like this, at this point make sure you go back to your orbit tool and give it a little bit zoom out. Hold Alt so that you have that 3D feel like something actually happened. Hold Alt, give it a little bit zoom out like this. Then let's reset the view, and this is what our camera sees. So it moves like this. Okay, so right here, maybe at frame 192, we can zoom out more. So hold our orbit tool, hold Alt, our trackpad, and zoom out more. So let's reset the view and see what we have. So we have more view there. So from here at 180, there is this view. So when the character moves from here, let's play that real quickly. When the character moves from here, we have this. All right, so I'll hit Ctrl J on my keyboard to isolate everything. And let's play that from the beginning and see what we have created. Let's go. Let me bring that closer so that we can all see what it is. All right, so let's go. So you can see how simple it is to actually use the Moho Studio camera, and you can go ahead to add the roll, the camera tilt and pan in whichever way you want. It actually all depends on what you are creating and how you are directing your scene, your movie, or what have you. So if this tutorial is actually really helpful to you, make sure you like, comment, share, and make sure you do subscribe to the channel. And yes, again, share with your friends that are animators so that they could learn something new. We'll also be doing lots more on AI animation combined with Moho Studio to bring out something really unique and beautiful. And if you have any questions, make sure you drop it in the comments below, and also check out this next video and learn something awesome. I'll see you inside.